Welcome back to Pop Goes the 60s, ladies and gentlemen. I am Matt Williamson, and my guest today is Ethan Alexanian, a colleague of mine from way back. And this is the second time, I believe, joining me, maybe the third. And welcome, Ethan.
Thanks, Matt, for having me. I
What?
always look forward to speaking with you.
Well, thanks. I look forward to having you on. It's kind of overdue here. The last time we did this, we did a special one on graphic design and logo design of 60s groups. So that was a pleasure for me because, ladies and gentlemen, if you are new to Ethan, he is also a fellow graphic designer. So that's where he and I have really connected. And we decided to do this song. This is a kind of a series that I got started a year or so ago called Spotlight On. And Ethan and I were talking. So, hey, Ethan, why don't you come on? We'll do a spotlight. What song do you want to do? And this is the song he picked. And I was thrilled to do It's All Too Much by the Beatles.
I don't know whether today it's my favorite or not. There's three that are kind of always in rotation competing for number one, and coincidentally two of them are the George songs from Yellow Submarine.
Oh, really?
So I'm not going to do a terribly great deal of telling show and tell today, but there is this from I believe, 1996 from that great Capitol Records jukebox series.
Oh, yeah.
One side is Only a Northern Song, and the other side is our victim for today, It's All Too Much.
Yeah, those jukebox 45s are really a cool idea. And I maybe have one. I didn't collect them, and I had a jukebox at one time, and
You know,
I
Matt, that
just
doesn't surprise me. You
well, it
seem
was
like
a
the kind of guy who would own a
well,
jukebox.
this one was actually a disco era jukebox from 1979 that was in my grandparents' restaurant. It just kind of sat around, and I used it for some parties and things. But I just at this point in my life, I'm gonna they're not easy to keep running. If you want a vintage one, as a
No,
matter of fact. But if I did have a vintage one, I'd probably have that 45 in it.
it's probably my favorite Beatles single because it's two of my three favorite Beatles songs.
Well, let's ask you what the third favorite is.
Tomorrow Never Knows.
Okay, wow. So we're gonna. This is those are all falling
She
into
she
this.
said she said is maybe fourth.
Okay, so those all four of those fall into the psychedelic category, which we'll be talking a little bit about today, because this song certainly is one of those fine psychedelic songs from the era. And so your connection with this song, if you have one, what got you into this song? Do you remember when you heard it first or anything?
The obvious thing is the first time I saw Yellow Submarine. Um, I don't know if the song stuck out to me, the first time I saw it, but I was going kind of down memory lane earlier today preparing for this, and so when I got into the Beatles, um, my dad really facilitated this because his love language was pirating media for people.
Ah,
And
very
so
good.
he he always had a hard drive connected to the TV. And when I got into the Beatles, he had all of the Beatles movies ready for me,
Very
including
cool.
Yellow Submarine.
Okay.
And
I didn't see the movie too much later, but I'm sorry, go ahead.
yeah, no, it's just when I was 8 getting into the Beatles, it was so good having, these visual components as well. Because if I had gotten into the Stones or the Kinks, sure, there's maybe like a concert movie, but the Beatles had movies.
Yeah, I didn't see Yellow Submarine till much later, and I think the Yellow Submarine soundtrack was one of the last albums I heard. So this song came to me, I guess, rather late compared to the other Beatles songs. And at that time, I was just starting to get into psychedelic music. So I'm like, well, what have we here? This is really good. So I've always liked this song, and it seemed obviously it has that whole magical mystery tour feel to it. And indeed, it was recorded during those sessions and was in the running for that EP or that album, whichever you prefer. And I think that would have made a fine selection on there. And we'll talk a little bit about the versions of this song. But it was recorded in late May of 67. So they had already started some of the Magical Mystery Tour songs by this point, and it's basic. It was recorded. It was not at the regular studio, was it?
No, it wasn't Abbey Road, and it wasn't even Olympic. They recorded it at Delane Lee, which
Yes.
I think the Move also would have been in that studio at the same time recording all this. But all the usual suspects recorded there.
Yeah, Delane Lee. And I assume that they were just, that's the only studio time they could get. So they had to essentially rent space. And they did this for 2 days in May.
Yeah.
And George Martin was not among them. So they produced it themselves.
Yes. They didn't even have their normal engineers there.
Yeah, and it doesn't seem like there's any drop off in quality for me. Some people have called this, it's maybe not as produced as some of the other stuff from the period, but I don't know that it needs to be.
No, it may not be as, sonic smooth perfection as the kind of stuff you could get at Abbey Road, but it's not exactly like a Shell Tell Me era Kinks recording. Like it
True.
still had some fidelity.
Yes, correct. So this song
Also, I
just,
think it's
mhm.
kind of interesting that, what were the Beatles doing the day the most groundbreaking album of all time came out? They were back at Delane Lee with George Martin this time, doing It's All Too Much.
Yeah, and that was on the 2nd of June, I
Yes.
believe, right? So
For
yeah,
the
so
first
they're
and second of June.
first and second. Okay. Yeah, so these guys were, I guess you'd say they were workaholics on some level. I think that even though they were had slowed down because they hadn't toured as much, I think all the more reason, hey, we got to get in the studio. I think they were just that competitive. I think things were happening so quickly, and their peers were really kicking in, and all these new bands were coming on. So I think they felt the pressure and to never really be too far from the studio. And in this case, they couldn't get into Abbey Road, I assume, and had to rent another one.
The overwhelming emotion I kind of get from this song, and it makes sense from the time when it was recorded. It's always sounded just like pure euphoria. The Beatles riding the metaphorical high as well as actually being high.
Yeah, I
But
wonder, were they high during this? I wonder.
I would think maybe a
Pot
little
smoking for
grass.
sure. Yeah, I
Yeah.
would think.
No acid. Although I've read this described as kind of George's farewell to LSD.
Well, I wonder because when did he go to San Francisco? That was in July, I think, and I think after that is when he kind of walked away from it a bit.
Yeah.
But George, the
Yeah.
Beatles aren't the best on remembering the proper time frame. They might be off for a few months, but in the 60s, a few months is a great deal of time. So it
Yeah.
matters in retrospect.
In the 60s with the Beatles, a week is a great period of time.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So I'm a big fan of Magical Mystery Tour, and I think I would have preferred this song on that album. There's certainly some room for it. And like on Sergeant Pepper, George Harrison was basically sent back to the drawing board when he submitted only a Northern song, and then he offered Within You Without You, which replaced that for Pepper. I almost feel like It's All Too Much was replaced by Blue Jay Way.
It I could see that. I could see that. It doesn't have it doesn't feel as finished of the song as Blue Jay Way.
Yeah, I think that they could have. I don't think there's a whole lot more to do to It's All Too Much. Sweeten it a little bit, maybe. I mean, they've got brass on it and everything. So I think that
Which
it would have fit
there's
Magical Mystery Tour well.
that brass. I keep seeing or when I've been reading around about the song, uh, a lot of people don't like the brass.
Oh, really? Oh, I love it. I mean,
You
I
know who
think
didn't
the
like the
song,
brass? George Harrison.
oh, really? Why didn't he like it?
If I may quote
You may.
this. Where did it go? Where did it go? I wanted to have something to hold up. According to this 1999, what month? October 1999 issue of Mojo, George says, "To this day, I'm still annoyed that I let them mess it up with those damn trumpets." Basically, the song's quite good, messed up with all those trumpets. You can't tell what's going on because there's all that going on over top.
Yeah, I think that if they didn't use the trumpets and the brass, they would have had to shorten the song because I think it was getting, so far as I could tell, there maybe wasn't enough there to differentiate from, that long section where it's just kind of not just fading out, but I think it could have been a little shorter because we have three versions of the song. So the release version is 6 minutes and 26 seconds. The unreleased long version, I guess, unedited version, if you want to call it that, is 8 minutes and 16 seconds. And then the version with the extra verse, the shortest version, is 2 minutes and 22 seconds, which was used in the film. So I think 6:26 is a pushing it a bit. I think it could have been a minute shorter. I'm kind of a less is more guy with some of this stuff, but it's still a fun song, and I think they seem to be having fun making it.
Yeah, it's the Beatles having their very own freak out.
Very true. And the psychedelic movement, the problem with this song is not so much any problem with the song itself, it's just when it was released. The Beatles were lollygagging in 68 a bit when it came to this soundtrack, and this didn't get released till January of 69, by which the psychedelic boom was long over. And so this song, I think, suffered as a result of being released so late.
It does really kind of give a time and place when you're listening to it. It's maybe not as timeless as, say, something like Hey Bulldog.
Yeah, I think that's had it been on the Magical Mystery Tour soundtrack, and it would have just been more memorable and would have been more accepted, I think. And as it turned out, the soundtrack for Yellow Submarine ended up being somewhat of a hodgepodge. That
Yes.
even though the film was psychedelic, that was released in July of 68. So that was basic. So the Yellow Submarine film pretty much puts the exclamation and ends the psychedelic period. By summer of 68, it was pretty much over. And so the song does just sneak in there via the film,
Mhm,
but most people I don't think know it from the film. Well, maybe they do, but the albums are what lives the longest, so
mhm.
it kind of got lost.
It's I don't think, and I'm sure people in the comments will correct me. I don't think the sales for the album were the strongest. Even though it still got to, I believe, number two in America. Well, because the White Album was still number one.
Yeah, I think that when I said the Beatles were lollygagging, I think that this soundtrack should have been released with the film. I mean, there's really no excuse to release it after the White Album. I mean, it's so dated, and I think they just didn't have their marbles together to get it out in time prior to the White Album, which didn't come out till November. So it's not like I don't know what took so long. I think once the White Album came out, they didn't want to crowd that release, obviously. Well, then just release this when the film goes out. I mean, it would have that would have made sense, but people don't really mention that. And it kind of bothers me that this was this is something that had Brian Epstein been around, it would have been released at the right time. But as it
Yeah.
turns out, it's released after Christmas. I mean, why not just release it after Abbey Road for God's sakes? I mean, that part of it was a mess.
Well, I can imagine it wasn't exactly the top of the agenda to get these songs released because, well, they had been relegated to the film, basically. The Beatles didn't think highly enough of these songs to use them elsewhere.
That is true. I must say that's true. And I wonder how many songs they felt they had to give for this new soundtrack. Because obviously, going into this whole project, they were going to use old songs. They're using songs from 1965. I mean, there's nothing that precluded them from using all old songs. So I don't know where they got this idea to make new songs for this. I just think these are leftover songs. As
I
was,
I've gotten the impression over again some show and tell through Inside the Yellow Submarine,
oh, cool.
its sequel book, and the Al Brodak's book, that the Beatles, the agreement was that they could use as much previously released material as they wanted, but the Beatles had to provide four new songs.
Oh, it was. Okay.
And
Okay.
so, by, late 67, 68, they got a tape with the four new songs was in the hands of TVC London and the
Okay.
animators.
Okay. Well, and when was All Together Now? That was recorded in 67 as well, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So I think there was some talk about that one being kind of a contender for the Our World broadcast, but I'm not sure if that's accurate or not. Kind of
I,
a
I
sing-along type of thing.
I could see it. I think it
Yeah.
was maybe a couple, like maybe a week or two before this.
Hmm.
It was recorded pretty close to it. I still think the earliest recording was only a Northern song.
Yeah. Okay.
That must have been, February or March 67.
All right. Well, this song, It's All Too Much. I've always loved it because of I just think it's a great slice of psychedelia. It's got great guitar. I like the horns. It adds some whimsy to it, which the psychedelic period to me was also not just colorful, but whimsical. And that British side of psychedelia, this really fits the bill. So I've always loved this song. And it's one of George's songs that doesn't get talked about too much. And it's too bad it got shoved onto the Yellow Submarine soundtrack, even though it works there. And it works in the film. But it's one of those songs that most people have overlooked. And when I mention it to people who are casual fans, a lot of people don't know it.
I knew these psychedelic Beatles songs before I knew any of the other psychedelic stuff from anyone else from that period. So
Oh,
instead of, oh, I'm getting into psychedelia, I'm gonna check out these Beatles songs. When I eventually did get around to the merry stroll down psychedelia lane, it was like, oh, these songs remind me of those Beatles songs. So the Beatles had
mhm.
shaped my interest in that.
Okay.
And the goal was just to find more music that sounded like that. But I didn't know the words to describe it.
Well, that is kind of my background as well, because I was a big fan of the Pepper Magical Mystery Tour period, and that got me going off and looking for other groups that produce music like that. And obviously, the Beatles were leading the pack. So, yeah, that was very much a part of my musical background. Let's do some of the criticism.
The first critics, and I think probably the biggest critics of this song and the other songs with it on the Yellow Submarine album and soundtrack, were the people making the film. I think Hey
Ah,
Bulldog was the only one of those that was held in high regard by the animators, because
interesting. Didn't the animators know they were making a psychedelic movie? I don't think they understood that. I mean, I don't
they
mean,
they knew they were making a Beatles movie.
okay. Yeah, I
I think
think that
the psychedelia just kind of happened.
well, I remember McCartney saying that he was surprised that they went this psychedelic direction. He didn't really expect that. So I'm not sure. It just was in the air. It's just everybody was going in that direction. I mean, films were going in that direction. If you've seen the film Casino Royale in '67, I mean, it'll give you an idea of where everything was going. So I assume
Too
that's what.
too much for one James Bond.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So some
There's
of
a
the
If I may read a quote from Al Brodak's
yes,
or his
please.
book, with his head buried in the sofa. I think that's how you say his name. Apologies to the. I think Irix voice is muffled. Stokes has a lock on my bulldog, but that other dreck they dumped on us. All together now, all too much. And one other song which they don't even have a title for, just some weird scratchy sounds they think passes for music. That one's a bitch.
Well, that's interesting to hear that. I haven't heard that quote before, and I can understand their concern. I mean, it's all together now, and only a Northern Song are not what you would call what people were used to hearing from the Beatles. In other words, hit material. And
No,
I know a lot of people like It's Only a Northern Song. I've always liked that song too, but um, it's not for everybody.
another quote. I'm trying not to be too quote heavy, but I'm just kind of happy that I prepared.
Yes, no, I've got
Um,
plenty of quotes, so go for it.
Just thinking just thinking, the four of us sitting here in pre-dawn London, all jazzed up on caffeine and challenging time, numbers, talent, even Disney, and in a sense, each other, putting our collective experience on the table to determine how to best manipulate this collection of souls. This is a small army to make a motion picture. Tall order, tall fucking order. It's all too much. That song, it says it all. There you have it, folks. We put it at the ass end of the picture. Two songs down, two to go. Good night.
Now that song, I haven't heard that quote either, but that song was used in a very, I guess, mind-expanding part of the film. And I guess that was by design. I think they kind of got it. I mean, is that how you would take it?
In doing the research, I went into this thinking that was the intention. I don't think it was. Everything I've gathered uh, kind of leads me to the belief that they had a whole other sequence in mind for this song at the end of the
Hmm.
film, but they had just run out of time or money. And I think that probably contributes to why it's such a cut down version of the song.
Interesting.
Like even
I,
the
mhm,
thing that really blew my mind watching it is those, the kind of transparent light, kaleidoscopic effects,
mhm.
which I read in one of these books that it was just an animator painting a bit of clear tape and shining a flashlight through it and trying to get through as much of this movie uh, as he could because the premiere was in a month.
Interesting. Now,
And the
one of the,
reason sorry. And the
that's okay.
reason
Go
they're
ahead.
wearing those black shirts is they were supposed to be inserted into the animated stuff, kind of matte style.
Oh,
Uh,
really?
yeah, so the
I did
Beatles would
not
be
know that.
interacting. But again, they ran out of time.
I did not know that. That is very interesting. Well, one of the things I uncovered was that the art director, Heinz Edelman, he based the visuals on some of the psychedelic London artists, Michael
Yeah.
English and Nigel Weymouth. Those are the guys that did a lot of the poster art and things in
Oh,
London.
like Hap
And
Shash in the colored coat.
correct, that those guys worked for that collective. And writer Stephen Glynn explained that the song gets the UFO treatment. UFO meaning referencing the London nightclub, calling it a happening that sought to create a totalizing, mind-expanding environment involving music, light, and people. So it sounds like there was some kind of intention with this song, but as you just pointed out, they ran out of time to really do it justice, which it's really kind of a shame.
It seems like from the time, the only positive thing someone had to say about that song is McCartney in the scene, in that end scene. Catchy tune that.
Yeah, this song, there's retrospectively, it's well praised and
It has
almost across
aged
the board.
very well.
I don't know anybody that says anything bad about it now. I guess basically it's kind of like, well, if you don't have anything nice to say about the Beatles, you shouldn't say it, kind of like that. But in this case, one of the early contemporary reviews, that's from Walter Everett, he said George Martin need not have worried about a day in the life being pretentious. It's tracks like It's All Too Much that are indeed too much. So you have some people pushing back on it. I know that Ian McDonald had a couple some negative things to say about it and most of the tracks from that album. But McDonald did say, if I can find it here, um, he considers the song to be the locus classicus of English psychedelia. So that I would agree with. Great example of that. Let's see what else we have contemporary. British Mag Beat Instrumental described It's All Too Much and Only a Northern Song as superb pieces that redeem side one. So they like both the George songs there. Record Mirror's reviewer said that it was the best sounding track on Yellow Submarine, adding, beside the beauty of the organ, the absolute volume of it, even when the record player is turned down, it's amazing.
Tim Riley's book, Tell Me Why, is it seems relatively positive, um, but as he said, Harrison's psychedelic output or Harrison's psychedelic outbursts point up everything that can go wrong with such ventures. The textures that coat Blue Jay Way, Only a Northern Song, and It's All Too Much wilt. These
Mm.
tendencies will later be tailored for songs like Long, 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 and the better songs on his first solo outing, All Things Must Pass. But unedited, they suffer from run-on lyrics sung with shallowed vocal delivery. Subtleties are scattered, good ideas are reiterated to no good purpose, and nice thoughts are subsumed by lack of immediacy.
That's a great quote. Great criticism. Yeah, I can see
Little
some
bit
of
of word
that.
soup at the end.
Well, yeah, but I think, if you want to really compare George Harrison's to Lennon McCartney's, and it's just Lennon's and McCartney's work was just, they were just better writers at this point. They could do more with the song, and there were more surprises in their songs. I don't
Oh,
think could say that about these two Harrison tracks.
it's one symptom of a much larger, affliction with the Beatles is that with everything involving this damn band, we hold them to a much higher standard than we hold anyone else to. So people can rag on Beatles songs and still think, oh, they're still better than the next three bands put together.
Very true. I think that's a very good point. We have such high expectations from them
Yeah.
that when something doesn't go quite like Beatle quality, it's like, well, what happened here? What the hell
Yeah,
happened?
one band's, throwaway song for an animated film could have been another band's, number one hit, soundtrack of the summer of 1967.
That's true. Very true.
But it's the Beatles, and
Mhm.
there's much larger things going on.
Yes, very true. Yeah, Barry Miles of the International Times wrote at the time, endless mantric around interwoven trellised, tessellated, filigreed, gildoiled, doiled, I don't even know what that word is. Spiraling it's all too much. So Barry Miles talk about a word salad there, but
Yeah. Well,
it's supposed to be
it
a
was the
positive.
International Times,
Yeah,
so
International Times, exactly. So yeah, there was when people mentioned it at all, it wasn't back in those days, it wasn't that positive. Even well, this was Nicholas Schaffner's book is 1977, so that's closer to the times than a lot of other of these retrospective criticisms. He said that It's All Too Much, whose highlights include some searing Velvet Underground feedback and an unusually witty epigram that just about sums up the spirit of 67. So he's got, I guess that would be a positive thing. So
that that
yeah,
same that same section on the Tim Riley book, it does open with one of my favorite ways I've seen the song described. A flaming guitar opens It's All Too Much with the resplendent surge of a Hendrix electric fireball.
I like this guitar better than a lot of Hendrix guitar works. 'Cause Hendrix guitar, sometimes it's just loud for the sake of being loud. And there's not enough nuance there. But this
No.
guitar sound to me, I always thought was just the right amount of feedback and amount of rhythm.
Going into this, you know, much like every other aspect of everything else involving the Beatles ever, there are people whose, you know, dedication in life is to peeling back all the layers to everything they did musically. And I have a lot of friends who do this, who there's a whole community of people on YouTube whose goal it is to try and recreate these sounds as closely as possible. And
Hmm.
I guess part of that's just to appreciate them more. But there's I want to make sure I get the gentleman's name. A guy named Marcus Phelan did a video on just the introduction to It's All Too Much. And I would have thought, just and then hold it against the amp and have it go, and it just
Hmm.
goes on and on. What he thinks, or his analysis of it is, he thinks there's five different tracks going on, with each track being the harmonics of like a different chord or a different note kind of faded in and out, almost like the tape loops on Tomorrow Never
Oh,
Knows.
really? That's interesting because I assume that it was just one chord and then the feedback just took over, which you can't control. That's
As
kind of what
someone
it
who
sounds
is
like, but
as someone who has tried unsuccessfully to recreate that in my basement with my Vox amp, all you get is just a very loud noise. This is something much more structured.
well, that doesn't surprise me from the Beatles. And we know what they struck. Look at the opening note of "I Feel Fine." That was very planned. The chord for "A Hard Day's Night," that's like two guitars, a bass, and a piano. I mean, this stuff was very well thought out. They put a lot of time into like just one
Yeah.
chord. So this follows
Although
suit.
this makes A Hard Day's Night much easier to decipher, or makes it seem much easier to figure out.
Yeah,
One of
yeah.
rock's great mystery chords. At least you can tell they're playing chords. With this, you can hardly tell if they're actually playing notes or what the hell's going on. But it's
Yeah, I
just,
suppose if you've got it, you can just record an effect with a
mhm,
guitar
yeah.
and just record it and just drop it in wherever you want.
And, you know, this is a post Sergeant Pepper Beatles we're dealing with. They have a lot of experience in, experimentation by this point. Um, we were talking before we started, and I'm gonna still hold my theory that I think it's Paul on guitar.
Yes, let's talk about this because this I'm sure people will want to weigh in on this. You know, who's playing on this track? We've got essentially organ, bass, guitar, drums.
Mhm.
And what I'm not sure is if I would assume they would have played the basic track all four together. Because the reason I say that, they're in a rented studio. They can't, dick around much in like they would be at home. So
I
they've got to record, they've got to get something down. So I would assume the four of them played together. Then the question is, well, who played what?
well, as to the you know whether they were had time to dick around, if I can consult the Complete Beatles Chronicle by Mark Lewison, Thursday, 25th of May, they recorded from about 7 p.m. to 2:30 in the morning. Uh, they went back the next day and did a 7 to 12. Then they went back on the Thursday and they were there for 10:30 to 3:30 a.m. I don't think money was an issue for the Beatles. Um,
Oh, I think you'd be surprised. I think you'd be surprised about that when it comes to this kind of thing. They didn't record at other studios much, but I don't know how efficient they were, especially in the Pepper days. I mean, obviously, Magical Mystery Tour is kind of doing a second Sergeant Pepper. They didn't get it all out of their systems. So hence a song like this. But well, be that as it may, they had a few days
yeah.
in Pepper land. That's a pretty quick session for one song.
But in terms of song complexity, it's it's almost deceptively simple.
Yeah, I would say so. What you
It doesn't
mentioned
have
about,
all the it doesn't have all the trimmings of something like Only a Northern Song, where you have the sped up bits of classical music interspersed. This is a pretty standard 4/4 recording that goes on for a bit. With
Hmm.
the most outrageous it gets is the that feedback, and then you get some all hands on deck percussion uh, overdubs, and then
Hmm.
some brass, which I didn't realize this until going back, through the notes. The guy who, or one of the trumpet players, was one of the regulars, or he had kind of become a regular on Beatles records at this point, named David Mason. Not to be confused with Dave Mason from Traffic.
Right.
This is the
The
same guy who played the piccolo trumpet on Penny Lane, and then he
mhm.
was on All You Need Is Love, Magical Mystery Tour.
Hmm.
You know,
You
he
know,
he was he was a regular brass.
yeah, and I think they were just used to adding that kind of stuff. And you were saying that so George Harrison didn't like the final treatment of the brass being added, and I that surprised me because I would have thought it would have been
Yeah,
his idea. It probably was.
yeah, yeah. He let them mess it up with quote unquote those damn trumpets.
Well, whose idea was it? I mean, is George
I
passing
don't know.
is George passing blame here again?
He
Come
he
on,
very
George.
well could be. Ring in that same article, Ringo was much kinder about the song.
Hmm.
He said, "All things." I keep calling it "All Things Must Pass"
Yeah.
because it's a four word title. It's all too much. George's track. That's the one that I think really sets the mood of the movie. I think that's where the music and the movie really gel. Good on you, George.
Yeah, I think that's a good point because I never I think some of the like I thought Eleanor Rigby and Nowhere Man were also really good for the film. Some of the other songs maybe not as much, but I mean they all kind of work. But I think
I don't think there's a song in the film that shouldn't be there. I do realize as the words come out of my mouth, um, and if you think back on the Yellow Submarine song track,
mhm,
okay, everything seems normal. Everything seems, yeah, these are the songs in the film. And then you got Love You Too,
mhm.
which you remember, oh yeah, it was in the movie for about 30 seconds. Same thing with Think for Yourself, which doesn't
Yeah.
even appear really in the film apart from, you know, an isolated uh, vocal track.
Yeah, I don't know. I think they just because the Beatles had almost nothing to do with putting this together. I think they had so much going on, and I think they kind of regretted even being involved with what was thought of as a cartoon. And
Well,
McCartney, I think, was surprised they went in this psychedelic direction. I think pleased, but didn't expect
yeah,
that.
I think they were all pleasantly surprised because they were, preparing for the worst, given that a lot of the same crew working on this film were some of the same people in the same production studio, King Features, that worked on the, shall we say, beloved Beatles ABC cartoon. Maybe not beloved by the Beatles,
Right.
and that's why they were
Yeah.
all quite nervous.
Yeah. Although those cartoons, some of those are pretty funny now that I see, when I see them, I look hilarious.
Yeah,
They'll never
George
see the
sounds
light
like,
of day, though.
oh no, George sounds like Dracula.
Yeah. So getting back to our instrumentation, you think the guitar is Paul. I would say, because
I
George,
would go one
and I
step
think that,
further.
okay,
I,
go
I
ahead.
I don't just think it's Paul. I'm pretty sure it's Paul specifically on his Epiphone Casino that he still plays on tour. It's the one he played on Paperback Writer. It's the one he played on the Taxman solo. It's because
Hmm.
it's a semi-hollow guitar. It's got those little violin F holes,
Hmm.
and so it's those you can really get some nasty feedback. I've got an Epiphone Casino. It's quite fun to, hold up against an amp and
Yeah,
just
you
let
need
it
that hollow
go.
body to get you the
Yeah.
feedback. Yeah, I have always felt that the style of playing was more John. And I think the idea that Paul played on it, that came from George, who admitted to, well, he's playing organ. This is in George's sitar slash organ phase where he put his guitar down, being the lead guitarist of the biggest band in the world. I'm not going to play lead guitar.
Yeah.
I'll leave it to the other
He
guys.
said something to that effect in a Billboard interview
Oh, did
where
he?
all he said was you know, now I don't think I was playing the guitar feedback. As I say, I was playing the organ. So I think it was probably Paul that did that. Because when I think of Paul's lead guitar, I think of like kind of really fiery, aggressive, like fast bits, like the guitar sound on Good Morning, Good Morning.
Hmm. Yeah, it still sounds like John's style though, if he played like his stuff on
It doesn't
Revolution
sound
or,
sloppy enough to be John.
well, I wouldn't say that. John's guitar work, like on Happiness is a Warm Gun or Revolution, I don't find any of that sloppy. I just find it to be uh, feedbacky, perhaps without the feedback, but it just sounds like his style to me. And that would put possibly if Paul is on guitar, because I can't imagine this is a straight rock song. They're going to be playing it all together. I mean, they wouldn't just do the drums. I mean, they'd be playing this together. So that would put John on bass probably, which is possible because the bass,
They have been known um to record, basic tracks and then later overdub. Well, especially in this period, Paul would be playing with the rest of them on something else and would overdub the bass later.
like on Helter Skelter, I think would be an example of that, where John was on bass in
Yeah.
the rough mix, but on the actual track, I mean, if he is on there, it's buried under Paul's bass playing, I believe.
Rain is a great example
Yes,
where the bass wasn't added until I think after the vocals were added because Paul was really, he was really trying to be a better bass player and would often, I believe, record a very basic part and
hmm,
then would, you know, sit on it and then, come up with something more complex later.
yeah, for sure. I mean, a lot of that Pepper era as well. Like a perfect example would be Lovely Rita, where the bass was overdubbed later. And I think that not only did he want to do a better bass part, but it allowed him to do something else on the basic track. But the thing I always say, and this is where the McCartney fans that oftentimes are most vocal are just not musicians, and they insist that McCartney's this great bass player. But the problem with his bass playing in this time is that he's not part of the rhythm section. He's not laying down the bottom. That's the job of the bass player, and it's a very important part. So these Beatles songs are often they lack bottom, and it really explains how important Ringo was to carry that all himself. So I think McCartney, in his efforts to put this flowery bass on, which we love, also had its downside. But
Um,
yeah,
what
his part on Rain is one of my favorite bass parts
what
of any
it
Beatles song.
also could be, and again, this is just kind of speculation. Since George is on the organ, you can get pretty low on the organ and
Yeah,
have, your left hand be the bass player, a la Ray Manzarek.
that's true. Maybe he's playing the pedals
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
Steve Winwood.
Well, take Blue Jay Way, for example.
Mhm.
The opening, I think there's two different organs going, but there's one that's really low and, bottom heavy and you can survive without a bass player if you've
Yeah, I
got
suppose
something like that.
especially if you're laying down the basic tracks, you certainly can. I think there's been some bad information about the track Rain and the bass playing. This idea that McCartney played it faster and it was slowed down for the actual recording. I'm sure you've heard that.
Yeah.
It's actually the opposite.
Yeah.
It was sped up for the recording. it was played slower and sped up. And I won't go into the details, but we've got proof of that from I won't bore people with the, the details, but it's quite interesting how the proof came out about this. But it's just one of those things that people like to run with certain things when their favorite Beatle gets highlighted in something, and then the truth actually comes out.
Well,
But
the
in the
crazy
case,
thing is we
mhm,
don't even know 100% what the truth is, because even with all the stuff that came out on the Revolver box, there's people who are adamant and convinced, no, this tape's at the wrong speed. We knew it was at a faster speed, but this is much too fast,
that's true. That's
given
true.
what was had been circulating on the bootlegs.
Hmm. Yeah, this idea of getting to exact truth. I mean, who knows? I mean, some of this stuff is like the funniest thing I read was Giles Martin was weighing in. People
Oh,
were
oh,
telling him,
good.
yeah, people were telling him what was what. He's like, look, I've got the tapes. I've been listening to. I've got them right here. I mean, they won't hear it. And here he's got the
Yeah.
you can verify it on the tapes. I mean, that's obviously one thing you can do oftentimes, but yeah, there are still some questions out there.
Yeah.
And getting
I mean,
back
he's
to,
he's the crown prince of the Beatles. He's never gotten anything wrong.
well, in some cases, if you've got the tapes to verify, I mean, that's what's that's just what it is. How
Right,
can you,
I'm
you
just
know,
being a little, shit disturber. I
well,
know he's got access to stuff that would immediately shut down any sort of argument with all the,
yeah,
pre-track chatter.
yeah,
Because there
there's all
could,
kinds
for
of
all we
stuff.
know, there could be a lengthy discussion at the beginning of the tape. It's like, okay, now you do this. By the way, I'm playing the bass. For the record, blah blah blah.
Yeah, in fact, I like those conversations. I wish I could get more of that. I know it wouldn't be, that's never going to happen, but those are the things that I love to hear because you learn about not just the song and who's playing, but you kind of learn about them and just you learn more about the dynamics of how they're working together. And when you hear them speaking about the song, I thought that's very valuable. So that's the stuff I like to hear on
Yeah.
these box
Well,
sets.
we're also not in the majority here. Us Beatle fans love this stuff, but
That's
you
true. I
know,
mean,
when
other
the
people will just bore to tears. Like
well,
I've got a buddy of mine. He's a Beatle fan, but he doesn't get into the nitty gritty like you and I would, or a lot of people that watch these Beatle channels. It's like, oh, I just can't. I'm just not into them like in that way.
when the new Anthology 4 came out, I happened to be playing it in the car uh for my mom, and it got to one of the early tracks. I think it might have been Tell Me Why, but where they're
Hmm.
just like going on and they're chattering and chattering, and she's like, I just find this annoying.
Okay. Yeah. Well.
But she likes the
Yeah.
Beatles.
Yeah.
But
I mean, it's not for everybody. So I
no,
mean, we love it because we're getting to know them better, and it's just giving us more information, and it just makes us love them more typically.
yes,
But it's not for everybody.
no. It's
People
only
think we're
for
weird.
us. It's only for us, people with bookshelves full of books about the Beatles and bootlegs of everything they've ever done,
Right.
and the stuff that we don't have, we are actively complaining that we don't have.
Well, we're spoiled. We're spoiled brats, and we like to
Yeah.
stomp our feet and scream and everything.
My
That's just
good friend Dylan, uh, he happened to overhear me complaining about one of these Beatles box sets once and about the content. And he's like, Ethan, you Beatles fans are like the petulant children of the music industry. You've gotten everything.
well,
And
most people would say they didn't get everything, and they're upset about it.
no, oh no. Like he'll mock me. Oh no, you only got 5 discs for the White Album? Oh no.
Yeah, it's we're getting near the end here with what we're going to be given. I'm sure there's other interesting things that might change some stories and shed some light on some things that people always talk about, but it's just a byproduct of how much people love them and how revered they still are. So amongst this crowd, the crowd that is into this kind of stuff, which is kind of a YouTube podcast crowd, I would call now. In the olden days, it used to be, I guess, the convention crowd, or what, I don't know what
Yeah,
you, if they had a name for it then,
yeah.
but yeah, it's really,
Nerds.
yeah, that's why I wanted to do this series to dive into some of these songs like this and just talk about them on a level that would make some people cringe. It's like, what do you mean there's three versions of It's All Too Much? I never heard of that song, you know? So it's just fun stuff.
Yeah. Um, since I wasn't around when this happened, I'm gonna have to defer to you. Um, do you remember what was it like when Yellow the song track came out? Because it seems like all the album releases pertaining to this project have always been kind of, I wouldn't say under the radar, but they weren't, you know, headline headline in Billboard.
Yeah, so I think did that come out in 99? I can't remember when
Came out in 99.
it did. Okay. Well, as I recall, this is some years, there was kind of a dribbling out of little things after the anthology. So you had the tapes came out on VHS, then it took a while for the book to come out, then a little more while for the DVDs to come out. So there was this kind of it seemed to be the right amount. And when the song track for Yellow Submarine came out, and it coincided with the release of the movie, which makes sense. I was surprised that they did that. I heard it, I'm like, wow, they fixed a couple things in here that I noticed that were wrong. And I thought they were improvements. I thought it was better. And I thought then jump forward into the remix world that we're in now. I thought they were going to copy what the way they did it for this Yellow Submarine song track. That's not how the new remixes went. So
No.
I was disappointed
I
because
I
the
think the Yellow Submarine song track, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
no, that's okay.
Um, it's it is one of my favorite ways to listen to that era of the Beatles because it is such a good sounding remix and it righted a lot of the wrongs that had been, like like fake stereo, uh, only a northern song, all this
Hmm.
stuff now in, actual stereo,
Fully remixed by Peter Cobbin at Abbey Road
assisted by
Studios.
Paul Hicks and Merrick Stiles.
Yeah, so when that was done, I didn't at that point expect the whole catalog to be remixed. I thought, well, maybe they'll do a compilation and just remix certain songs, which I don't think is a bad idea. But this is not the direction they went for the remixes, and I can only believe that, and I don't know if these guys were available. I have no idea, but it seems to me that they picked a direction to go that didn't really have to do with quality,
No,
if you catch my meaning. So, and it was a marketing and this is nothing against Giles Martin, who seems to be a
no.
perfectly lovely guy, talented guy. But I think that they were giving him, I don't know if he was even given the proper tools to do what needed to be done. I mean, I wouldn't put all the blame. It's a group thing, and you have to have the resources around it to really do the right job on it. So I never felt that Apple approached the project of remixing the albums in that way, like it was done for the Yellow Submarine soundtrack in 1999.
He was just, I think he's done a good job with a lot of things. I take issue with some of the remixes, but it's not unfair to say, he was handed the keys to the kingdom because he had basically taken over as his dad's ears when George Martin was dealing with hearing loss.
Yeah, well, I like your choice of words, keys of the kingdom, because he's of Beatle royalty.
Yeah,
That's part of the marketing of this whole thing.
it feels
And
much nicer to read, Beatles album remixed by, Giles Martin instead of, some unknown, well, unknown to the general audience,
right.
general public
There's
sound
no
engineer
story
at Abbey
there.
Road.
Yeah,
This,
there's no
it's like,
story.
oh, he's George Martin's son. That feels nice. They kept it in the family
Right.
for
Yeah,
for better or worse.
the way I feel about all the remixing, because it's I'm like you. I like some of it. Some of the remixes I think are good.
I
Some I think
I think the
are
Pepper, I will stand by it. I think the Pepper remix is maybe the definitive way to listen to the stereo album for me.
hmm. Yeah, I think some are very good, some are very bad, and some are just I'm just indifferent to. It's like, not much, not an improvement. So my question would be, or my comment is that I don't think it should have been done at all. If it wasn't going to be done with the utmost care, why bother? So I'm kind of in that camp. I mean, I was perfectly happy without the remixes. The other thing I was very impressed with was the Love compilation, the
That's a
Circle
very good
of Love.
sounding.
Incredible sounding, and the way that they separated some of the instruments there. See, the remixing I crave has to do with a separation of the instruments so that I can hear them more clearly. Now, that's not always easily done, but that's what I was hearing in the Love compilation. And I thought, wow, if they can, you know, do this to the love songs here and create this great separation, I can hear these instruments so much more clearly. That I also had that kind of feeling going into these remixed albums. I was going to get more of that, but it was this. I had to strain to hear some of it, quite frankly.
I don't know if it's like a general consensus. Abbey Road is a very well engineered album. As the remixes have gone on, you reach a point of diminishing returns where it's like you can't really improve much on the original recording, but then when you start to go backwards to like Revolver, you can't really get much of those tracks or many of those tracks apart, and really the separation technology is, I'd still say, probably in its infancy. It's getting really good and it's getting better by the year, but you
Yeah,
know,
you're probably right about that. And there's some things that, I'd like to hear some of these things that you are buried in the mix. I think it's very interesting.
but people may look back on the Revolver set, maybe, because, people will be talking about this like 15, 20 years from now, in the same way they talk about like those 1987 remixes of Revolve or of Rubber Soul and Help. Like, oh, they're very
Mhm.
of their time, digital reverb. You can kind of tell it's early separation technology. I think that's what people might be saying.
Yeah, you're probably right. And well, just so that they're saying anything at all as we
Yeah.
go into the future here.
We
And
don't know how good it's going to get.
yeah, and I mean, will it even be applied? I think, like I've been saying for quite some time, I think people like you and I and fans will be the ones doing this and doing the yeoman's work on remixing it, upgrading sound, I think.
All the best Beatles remixes nowadays are all fan made.
Yeah, yeah.
My friend, I'm not gonna rat him out, but I know he's listening to this. He surprised me the other day using a consumer grade, free to use audio separation tool. He created a stereo remix of Paperback Writer using only the Mono Masters mix.
Really?
And at first he didn't tell me what he had done. And so I was listening and I was thinking, this is all pretty good. This is pretty good. Separation's good. And then he told me I was able to pull that all out from
Wow.
a lossless mono file.
Mm. Wow,
And
that's
it
amazing.
kind of just it's made me rethink everything.
Wow. Yeah, there's a couple tracks I would like to work on. And there's a couple things that you could finish off some Beatles songs, not adding anything that they didn't create themselves, but just essentially piecing some things together, which is by and large how a lot of editing is done on their work anyway. It's not like everything's one take. I mean, there's pieces, and that's just how
Yeah.
recording in the studio is done. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm excited for that too. I how am I going to find the time to add that to my list of things to do? But yeah, there are a few things I would love to do.
It's one of the few real optimistic things I can say about AI as time goes on.
Yeah, I consider it not AI. I just consider it software. You know, I as to me, I don't.
Mhm.
There's a the artificial is the part of AI I don't really like. I like the
Mhm.
official. So software
Yeah.
can do what you're suggesting,
Well,
and
because the stuff isn't there's a difference between, the separation kind of stuff and, what people call generative AI. This isn't generating anything new.
gotcha.
It's,
Mhm.
pulling out what was already there.
You're right. We probably are in our infancy, and you know, the younger generations that you're like yourself, you're going to be the ones leading this because by then, I'll be too old and I won't be able to hear or see or
For all we know,
anything.
10 years from now, there could be, an app on our phones where you can, remix, songs to your
Yeah,
choosing the way people, fiddle with EQ. It's like,
yeah,
no, I
probably.
want to hear, no, I want to hear more drums on this one. Maybe less vocals, and you're able to just tweak it with like a slider in Spotify or something.
Yeah, it's probably not 10 years away. It's probably more like three or maybe it's
Six
already
months.
here. Yeah, no kidding. Uh, well, yeah, there's so many different facets that we branch out into when we talk Beatles, and obviously this is the psychedelic period, and that's the distortion in it's all too much. It begs for listening to stems individually, and I listened to some stuff just the other day, just preparing for this, and there's some stuff I hadn't heard before when you listen to those stems, but it's also fascinating.
Yeah.
So let's do a sidestep here. You have done, I had mentioned earlier in our discussion here that you are a graphic designer.
Yes.
And Yellow Submarine, the album was initially, they toyed with doing an EP, a double
Yes.
EP. And you designed an EP that never was.
Mhm.
So this fits in nicely to
Yes.
my albums that never were. Would you pull that out for us?
I most certainly can. This is all based off of, there's a couple acetates that still exist and there was a designated catalog number for it. There was a running order. We knew which tracks were going to be side one and side two. And we even have the mixes that they were going to use,
Oh,
which have been released on the Mono Masters CD. So what I've come up with is, and this is my first time showing this publicly. So and this is what I've come up with.
very
Songs from the
cool.
film Yellow Submarine, taking a lot of design cues from, EMI contemporary releases at the time. It's a flip back sleeve design, even down to, fake British Apple labels,
Very cool.
which for those of you who don't know, um, it was going to be released as an EP. It was suggested that it was going to be released as an EP. In fact, I can quote something a little bit more specific.
Yes, please do.
So a George Martin quote from I can't remember which inside the Yellow Submarine book. I'll send you a clarification which one. Maybe put like a little subtitle. The Beatles decided to issue. This is a quote from George Martin. The Beatles decided to issue an EP of their four new songs from the film. For their part, the film people wanted me to put out an LP of the background score with the voices from the film and with narration. This was to tell the story of Yellow Submarine and to be assembled by the man who had written the original story, uh, Eric Siegel. We were about to start working on that when the Beatles changed their mind, changed their collective mind. No, we don't want to do that. They said, we want to have a long playing record. What they had released, or had realized, of course, is that EPs didn't sell in America. So it was decided that the album should have their music on one side and mine on the other. Now,
Mhm.
a
Very
special treat.
shrewd move.
Well, they had learned their their lesson from the
Magical Mystery
Magical
Tour, I
Mystery
assume.
Tour.
Yeah.
I've actually written a little exercise in fiction. I don't know if you'd want me to read this.
Well, go for it. You brought it up. Now you teased us. You
Okay,
got to read it now.
so I wrote this um, as a sort of these Beatles reference book guides. I decided, what if I wrote a bit about this EP as if it actually existed? Due to the amount of repeated material, a full LP soundtrack of the Beatles' music from their 1968 animated film Yellow Submarine was decided against for the UK market. A five-track mono EP was prepared for release by EMI Apple, containing the four new songs from the film, Only a Northern Song, Hey Bulldog, All Together Now, and It's All Too Much, as well as an entirely brand new, at the time, track, Across the Universe. On January 17th, 1969, music from the film Yellow Submarine by the Beatles, catalog number GEP 8968, was released in the United Kingdom. Across the pond, Capitol, once again unwilling to revisit the commercially unsuccessful EP format, decided to put together their own package for the music from the Yellow Submarine film, with the aforementioned four new songs featured in the film on side one, this time appearing in true stereo. As it was not featured in the film, Across the Universe was removed from the running order to make way for two previously released songs, which were featured in the film: All You Need Is Love and the title track, Yellow Submarine. Side two would feature several excerpts from George Martin's orchestral film score.
Very cool. That sounds very convincing. And it actually makes sense. It
Yeah,
does. It really does. And it's kind of that's why as Beatle fans we sometimes we have one foot in the fantasy world and one in
yeah.
reality.
I had fun writing it.
Yeah, it sounds great. I mean, you could have
Because
fooled
the,
a lot of
the
people.
goal with this is try and make everything as convincing as possible,
Hmm.
like down to the fonts. You know as well as I do, because you also uh nerd out about these things like I do. Getting the right fonts right can really sell something.
Yeah, it's like there are certain things that seem some empty spots that need filling, and that might be one of them. But that makes a little more sense. And I've got to get back on doing my Beatle album reviews, and I left off in end of '64, early '65, I think, and I'll be kind of the Yellow Submarine album will be a fun one to do just because you have to bring up these things. Certain things could have been done better, and how would that have been done? Obviously, it's hindsight's 2020, but this is one of those things. So, thank you for sharing that. These are great ideas for Record Store Day. I mean, just to have, I don't know, I can't imagine that they wouldn't have, they being Apple wouldn't have the resources to do something like this once in a while. But it
No,
seems like either they don't, obviously they don't want to do that, but I just, it's
they're
really kind of
represented by
disappointing.
Universal Music Group, the most powerful musical organization probably to ever exist. I think, they have access to graphic designers much more capable than me, and or certainly at least more expensive than I am.
Yes. You'd be surprised how, sometimes you get some very big organizations and there's some things that, well, this didn't get finished off very well. There's some quality control issues here or there. But I mean, that's all part of big business and their big business is it's not what we're used to. And it's a little bit sad that we don't get a couple of these little nice things that would be kind of fun, little things to add to collection in our old age.
Yes. Or my early to middle age.
There you go. It goes fast from here on in Ethan. So,
It's all downhill from here.
all right. Well, let's end it there. I mean, this was a fun discussion, and for those of you who want to get more of Ethan, he runs Fans on the Run. It's a podcast that's been around for I don't know how many years, many years. So he's all over any wherever you find podcasts and on YouTube. How long have you been doing it?
We've been together now for 40 years. No, it's Fans on the Run is six.
6 years.
I
Okay, well, same as me
one
from
of
like yeah.
the few pandemic Beatle podcasts that are still going.
Ah,
I say that with a very heavy asterisk.
okay.
Um, I'm not exactly the best at putting out episodes frequently.
Well, hey, I know how that is, and I know how busy you are. So you got to take care of business, and the internet will be there for you to add more to if you need.
So if you enjoyed all the thought-provoking you know, backed up by facts discussion we had today, there will be none of that on Fans on the Run because it's just it's the show made by, for, and about Beatles fans where I bring on someone like, I don't know, say Matt Williamson from Pop Goes the 60s, and we talk about how this person got into the Beatles, what the Beatles mean to them, and whatever tangents arise.
You've had some pretty high profile people
I
on your
have.
show, not including me, of course, but he's some much higher
Yes.
profile people. So
Yeah.
do check out his podcast. I'll put a link below in the description. And yeah, this is a series I'd like to do more, just focusing on one Beatles song and talking for about an hour on it and just enjoying ourselves and nerding out on the Beatles, which is what a lot of us still like to do.
There are worse ways to spend an hour.
That is true. That is true. All right, Ethan. Well, thanks for
By
joining
listening to
me.
some of my competitors. No, I kid. I kid.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time, and we'll have you back again. We won't take so much time to get you back on.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't, subscribe to this man. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that bell notification icon so you get notified every time he puts up a new video. Because they're good.
Well, thank you, Ethan. I get tired of saying that, but it does really help. So I
Yeah.
thank you all in advance. And I'll be back with another one here very soon on Pop Goes the 60s.